It was another hard-fought game, but the Saints were able to pull out the win, exiting Carolina victorious in prime time in a very hard-fought divisional matchup. Impressive night from Olave, who continues to show why he is WR1 caliber. An impressive night from Bryan Bresee, a special night for Bryan Bresee, the rookie defensive tackle, taking another step up in terms of aggression and showing where he can be a playmaker. And the defense as a whole, showing why they are not just a bona fide top 3 defense as it stands right now in the league, but why they could finish as the top defense in the NFL by season's end. I don't care about the Jets. I don't care about the Cowboys. Those Saints looked impressive last night, and that momentum could ride all season long. All this and more on the 3rd episode of Grunt Talks Saints. Let's go.
These little demons living underneath my bed creeping. Know the real monster lives above them all sleeping. That subtle breathing in your closet every single evening. Thought you never see me again. Looks can be deceiving. When they hear the sound of the drum, they'll be saying, oh Lord, here they come. Yeah, here we come.
Oh, and I wanted to highlight a stat here that I think some might find impressive because I know it's confused. Everybody talks about how much the Saints struggle against young quarterbacks. They do, especially young mobile quarterbacks. In certain games, RG3, Jalen Hurts. But after the win last night against Bryce Young, rookie quarterback Bryce Young and the Panthers, the Saints are now 40-19 against rookie quarterbacks since 2006. Saints came in to Monday night's game as the 3-point favorites. And of course, they win 20-17 on primetime. Dennis Allen comes out in some crazy preventing defense towards the end of the game. And of course, Carolina scores. And then it gives us a heart attack in Saints fashion with the onside kick. But the Saints hold on. They cover the 3-point spread like they always love to do in primetime. And they hold on to beat the Carolina Panthers. But man, it wasn't pretty. And it was hard earned. In the first half, that offensive line looked rough. Derek Carr looked frustrated. And then you see Jamal Williams go out with the injury, questionable to return. Only active running back on the roster is Tony Jones Jr., who I'm sure everybody is confused on which team he plays for. You know, he's played for the Saints the last couple seasons. He's been a practice squad body. Then he goes to Denver, signs with Sean Payton in Denver in the offseason, and then he's back with the Saints in the practice squad. And then he got a lot of reps today after Jamal Williams went down. But look, Carolina's defense is no slouch. Von Bell, Brian Burns, CJ Henderson. I think Von Bell, obviously, as y'all know, former Saint, came through with three solos, 3 assisted tackles, and interception. A huge interception over Derek Carr, who threw it in a triple coverage on a very, very tough read. We'll get to that in a second. But basically, Carolina's got a very good front seven. Tennessee has a very good front seven. So I'm always trying to give the offensive line a little bit of a bone. I know Derek Carr averaged like 2 seconds in the first half of the pocket. I understand how bad it looked. Trying to give Trevor Penning, I'll make a video on this later on in the week as well, but trying to throw Trevor Penning a little bone here. He was hurt last year. He came from a smaller school. He's a bigger guy, right? I mean, he looked bad in the Pro Bowl, as I mentioned in episodes past. I'm trying to give him a break. Tennessee Titans have a very good front seven, and so does Carolina. He's had some serious comp, and I don't know how much better it gets for him heading to Lambeau against Green Bay. But I'm gonna throw him a bone. I want to see him develop over these first few weeks. It's been horrible. It's been horrific. I mean, I think the whole line really collapsed last night in multiple different spots, especially in that first half. I mean, Cesar Ruiz was even breaking down at certain points, and I know he just got that bag. And that could just come down to good coaching, as I mentioned. Just really good zone defense played by the Carolina Panthers. Some solid blitzes being drawn up by Frank Reich. And then just Derek Carr looking uncomfortable trying to respond. Anything over 25 yards was clamped. CJ Henderson was locking down. Von Bell was locking down. The only person that could get open was Michael Thomas. And that's what we'll touch on is Michael Thomas, baby! Because he's back. MT13, Mr. Can't Guard Mike, has returned, and he looks like his old self. 7 receptions last night, and he was the only person. He was carrying that offense in the first half for the second game in a row. Olave gets off to another tough start, but then things open up for him later in the game. But Michael Thomas, man, without Michael Thomas, I'm not sure we would have even made it past the 50-yard line in that first half. So huge spotlight to him. He's moving back. I hope he picked up on fantasy, but he's moving back up to claim his spot as one of the top receivers in the league. I mean, he couldn't drop the ball if he tried. I don't know if y'all watched all his catches last night, or what was it, the butt tap sideline catch? Gorgeous. Great playing by Michael Thomas. I mean, that's probably the number one highlight besides Chris Olave's play of the game. Was I guess I should say the whole receiver core. The whole receiver core looks great, which is good because like compared to last year, then we had like Marquez Callaway serving as WR1 at some point. Then the year before that with Jameis, I think Deontay Harris was like leading the charge in receptions for a while, right? So compared to the last 2 seasons, the receiving room looks really good right now, which is important. Michael Thomas keeps catching footballs, right? You see Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave make some big splash plays, especially late in the last 2 games. Derek Carr needs that. In Vegas, in Oakland, wherever the Raiders played that week, that was where he struggled, was red zone efficiency. And like he forces passes under pressure. He looks uncomfortable. He has to have somebody there that he can rely on. I mean, he's definitely known to give too many 50-50 balls. He did it with Darren Waller through some distasteful interceptions. Did it to Devontae Adams. I think he did it against us. Kind of trusted his receiver a little bit too much, right? That's his problem. He trusts his receivers a little bit too much, which is a problem Jameis has, right? That a lot of people complain about. Drew Brees, didn't really trust his receivers enough, I think, in his later years. So it was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. But as long as Michael Thomas can, I guess, follow through with all the trust that Derek Carr is putting in him, then that's great. But one safety blanket for Derek Carr that why I'm not worried as soon as Alvin Kamara gets back. He mentioned Alvin Kamara in training camp. And that first week against the Chiefs in preseason, on that first drive, you saw how much Derek Carr relied on Alvin Kamara. He looked for him all the time. You look at that play, that pass that Tony Jones Jr. dropped in the end zone. Derek Carr clearly frustrated after that. Alvin Kamara's not dropping that. They ran a lot of West Coast offense last night, and they didn't have Alvin Kamara for that type of scheme, and it was very much noticeable. Jamal Williams goes out with the injury, as I mentioned, and Tony Jones Jr. becomes the only active back you have. You have to get Taysom Hill involved. I understand we got to get the run game back going, but as long as these receivers are there and they can serve as a safety blanket and they can just hold on one more week, we can squeeze out a win in Lambeau and get Kamara back fresh for the Buccaneers game. Taysom Hill. Showing Taysom time once again and how much of an impact he can make on the game. The announcer said it last night, when Taysom Hill touches the ball, good things happen. What he finished with 9 carries for 75 rushing yards, I believe. Yep, 9 carries, 75 rushing yards, averaged 8.3 yards a carry. In the first half, he was averaging over 7 yards a carry. Only had 4 rushes, though, by the way. And I'll touch a little bit on the play calling here in a minute, but that's one thing. One complaint I had about the play calling is I wish we maybe would have involved Taysom Hill a little bit more in the red zone, a little bit more on these 3rd and short plays, especially in the first half. I think we maybe could have converted a few more times. I think you could have seen maybe another 6 points from a couple field goals, or at least another 7 points on there somewhere if they were able to get in the end zone one of those times. If they would have maybe utilized Taysom Hill a little bit more. This is the second week in a row where I feel like they had Derek Carr kind of trying to throw himself back into a game a little bit too much in the first half. Luckily, they do get Taysom Hill involved at the right opportunities, especially late in the game, and that's able to help seal the victory. But Taysom Hill, another year of him being a complete power workhorse for that New Orleans offense. And look, another week without Alvin Kamara. This is the final week without Alvin Kamara heading into Lambeau against the Packers. This could be the week to use Taysom Hill. That's the former team for Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill used to play quarterback for the Packers. That's where Sean Payton and the Saints found him. So if he could go in and help be a little bit of a substitute for that run game, just like we saw last year with Alvin Kamara. Last year was a little different. We just couldn't get the run game going. Kamara was healthy, but he's not a power back, and they were trying to make him a power back, and it wasn't working. Surprise. But this year, Jamal Williams, if he could get healthy, Alvin Kamara being back week 4, they'll be fine. But if Taysom Hill can show out for us one more week and get this win, it'd be all right. Love seeing Taysom Hill involved. I don't want to see him become the entire identity of the offense, but I love seeing him get way more involved this week than he was against Tennessee. But I'll also spotlight Tony Jones Jr. a little bit. I think he had, 12 rushes for 34 yards, averaged almost 3 yards a carry, and he had 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, a huge shout out to Tony Jones Jr. He's a practice squad body. He came through and he really showed out in that second half. And that's when the blocks really started to develop for him as well. But he had a couple cutbacks. That touchdown he scored on that big 3rd down conversion he had, I mean, he had some pretty nasty cuts. So huge shout out to that whole rushing game. I think Jamal had 9 rushes for 29 yards. He averaged 3.2 yards a carry. So besides Derek Carr, of course, when he was scrambling backwards, but I mean the whole running back room averaged about 3 yards a carry at least. So that's solid, and that's why I wish you had Derek Carr throw almost 40 times. And I think you could have had Derek Carr throw for 28 times or less. And it could have been, I think you could have seen more points on the board if you made that decision. But I won't beat up Derek Carr too much. Look, 21 for 36, 228 yards. It's just that interception was ugly. I think he should have gotten in the end zone at least one time. Just wasn't able to finish the job once he got into the red zone. I won't beat him up too much because I understand he was averaging such little time. As I mentioned, like 2 seconds in the pocket that whole first half. But he has to stop looking so stressed out back there. He has to understand when to take a sack. He has to understand when to throw it away. Right? He doesn't have to run outside. He doesn't have to escape the pocket. I know the offensive line's collapsing. I understand the offensive line is collapsing. But I think he panics and he forces throws. I'd rather, just like my argument with Jameis, a lot of people's argument with Jameis, I'd rather see him take a sack or throw the damn ball away than to force a pass into triple coverage or to force a pass into somebody you think will get the 50-50 ball, but you don't see that third defender sitting there lurking. Like, we just can't have that. It's not championship football. It doesn't matter how bad the offensive line is. We need a quarterback who's going to make these plays. And he did that, especially another time with Rashid Shaheed late in the game. Pulls out a dagger, sends them on a go route, and that's what another Rashid Shaheed connection that basically seals the game. So he can make these plays. I just want to see it more consistently in the first half from Derek Carr. And I have faith, though, as he develops more chemistry with these receivers and as we get more guys back in that running back room, he'll be just fine. And then you have Chris Olave finishing with 6 receptions for 86 yards. The Saints may finish with the best wide receiver duo in the entire NFC. And I mean that. These men's got hands. And if you don't believe me, we got the receipt.
Panthers rush 5. Carr steps up and delivers downfield. Get him a 50-50 ball. What a catch by Olave. Battling Von Bell all the way. Spectacular.
It's unbelievable. Look, he's got his left arm. He's got his right arm. CJ's holding his right arm. He can't get 2 hands up. And just look at that. If you could zoom in on his eyes, you could best believe they were as big as saucers.
Oh, we got one for Michael Thomas, too. We keep all our receipts.
Pressure picked up, looking for Thomas on the edge, who goes back, not in bounds. Caught the ball, didn't get the feet down. Dante Jackson in coverage.
Does he get...
Got the right foot down for sure. Then his backside hit inbounds.
I think that counts as a catch, no?
Right foot, rear
ball
end.
Secure. Ball never moves.
Control the ball.
I think they're gonna challenge it.
So as long as they exist, I don't care if we're putting up 9 points on the board. It's early, baby. It may be ugly, but 2-0 is 2-0. And as long as they are making plays like that, I don't have any real concern for this offense. And as long as the defense continues to show out, I mean, an insane performance for the second week in a row from the New Orleans Saints. A big step up from Alante Taylor. Demario Davis getting a huge sack late in the game, as always, against Bryce Young, the most underrated linebacker in the league. Man, he's lethal. One of the best signings, I think, in Saints history is Demario Davis. Number 56 getting a huge sack on Bryce Young late in the game. That whole defense ate. Another great game on Marcus May with 6 tackles. Alante Taylor with 5 tackles. Another straight game with 4 sacks. That's 8 sacks through 2 weeks. Now, remember, look, family, last year, the Saints didn't have that through like 5 games, I don't think. So 8 sacks through 2 weeks shows how much this defensive line has stepped up. Secondary showing out. I just said Alante Taylor 5 tackles. And I think he was the only real person people were worried about. And maybe Marcus May heading into the season in that secondary. Both, just very raw, not sure what you're going to get out of him. Marcus May, I mean, he has a history in the league, but he's coming off the DUI situation. He gets the big interception last week against the Titans, and then Monday night in prime time, he gets 6 solo tackles. And it wasn't super sexy 3 solo tackles for Pete Werner, but he continues to show why he could be. I mean, he's going to be a great linebacker. He's who I thought Zach Bond was going to be. I thought they were going to be like, they were going to switch roles. But Pete Werner spent a lot of time in college. I think he spent like 5 years, I think, playing college ball. I got to go back and look. He's played a lot of college games. He's very mature, and he looks it. I mean, he looks the part. He's shown up, and he's stepped up to be a leader on that defense. He had the injury bug last year, but this year he looked great. Last night he looked great with the 3 tackles, and then a huge step up by Brian Bresee. For those who don't know, and I know I made a post about this over on my Facebook page, but Brian Bresee lost his little sister Ella to a hard-fought battle with brain cancer last year on September 15th, 2022. Last night in prime time, 3 days after the 1-year anniversary of the passing of his sister, Brian Bresee comes out on that field, and he finished with, I guess, no real numbers on paper, but he had that huge sack that was an earned sack against Bryce Young, a strip sack. Brian Bresee got up, the motivation, a smile I saw on his face, the way that the team uplifted him. I mean, just an amazing moment for an amazing kid, man, an amazing young man who he's in his second career start in the NFL, overcoming the odds. I mean, he's in the 1% of the 1%, and he comes out and he makes a play like that. He belongs in New Orleans, a city that understands adversity. That play cemented that. I don't care that it didn't count on paper. I don't care that there was a penalty on Paulson Adebo. I don't care that it got called back. There was no disappointment on my face. Of course, I wanted to see it counts right on paper, but just him stepping up in that way, making that type of play after going through what he's done 3 days after the anniversary of what he's gone through. Just saying that shows tenacity. It shows grit, and it shows it shows resilience, and I just love seeing it. And I wanted Nolan Smith in the first round. I can admit that. I was hoping the Saints would get Nolan Smith. I'm happy Brian Bresee is a New Orleans Saint, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Last player I'm going to spotlight on that defense is lockdown Laddie, baby. Marshon Lattimore showing why I think he could finish as the number 1 lockdown corner in the league, even over Sauce Gardner. He didn't allow a single catch last night. I'm going to say that one more time. Go back and watch film. Go back and watch the whole game over. Marshon Lattimore did not allow a single catch last night. He had 3 solo tackles, a few swats, but I'm going to say that one more time because I feel like I just can't emphasize that enough. He didn't allow a catch. That's the definition of lockdown. That's the definition of lockdown, where you don't have jump off the paper stats because the quarterback didn't even throw your direction. That's the type of value Lattimore is bringing to this secondary. And the way the front 7 is closing the pocket, this season is going to be nuts, man. It's going to be nuts for this defense. I mean, defensive coaching, too. I mean, Joe Woods has been very impressive since coming to New Orleans. I mean, he's making Dennis Allen like a genius. Great hire. And I have no complaints about Dennis Allen either. I don't have a complaint about Dennis Allen. I don't think I've had one about DA since late last year. He's looked great. He's really showing the ability to commandeer that locker room. He has a presence on the sideline. He has a voice. He seems to really have poise, and he shows professionalism in post-game and in the game itself. He's showing that poise. He waited to show the challenge flag. He waited for the play to develop with the butt tap catch from Michael Thomas. Things like that. He made masterful. I mean, masterful. I don't know if you've noticed these adjustments. I know people are coming for DA's head with the offense. Don't do that. I mean, you got to come for the offensive line. He's not out there blocking. DA has made masterful defensive adjustments on 3rd down so far this year. Him and Joe Woods are working hand to hand in a great way, and they could make this defense into an all-time great defensive roster for the Saints, right? And this could finish as one of the greatest Saints defenses of all time. It looks like we have some of the best defensive play callers in the league. So, and that gives credit to Dennis Allen, and it gives credit to Joe Woods. Pete Carmichael obviously coming out in his normal vanilla play calling, but I get it. For the 2nd week in a row, I get it. I can't blame the man. If you can't get blocks for simple inside zones and crossers and a few post plays, you're not going to get blocks for fancy play actions and, situations to where the quarterback's going to have the ball for even more. I'd mentioned just more run plays. This is the 2nd week in a row where I feel like we didn't run enough in the first half. As we get Alvin Kamara back, I think that'll change. So, great job for the coaching staff, except for one thing. You should have kept Blake Gillikin. You should have kept the mullet. I love Lou Headley coming from Australia. I understand he was a scaffolder. He worked in construction, whatever, owns an Australian tattoo shop. Great backstory. 31-year-old rookie comes over, has an impressive preseason, beats out Blake Gillikin because we don't want to pay Blake Gillikin. He looked bad last night. Lou Headley looked really bad last night. I wish we'd have kept Blake Gillikin. But it's week 2, man. Maybe the Aussie will get it together. That's just my one quarrel with the coaching staff was that. Great pick with Blake Grouping go. Blake Grouping is still perfect on the year from field goals. So I'll give you a bone there, DA. Look at it together. It's week 2, man. Nick Underhill tweeted it. A lot of people have tweeted it. It doesn't have to be pretty, all right? Undefeated is undefeated. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just does suck to see the offensive line and the depth of that offensive line struggle in such a way after all the picks that we've invested into the offensive line the last few years. I mean, I guess the same can be said about pass rushers. You look at Peyton Turner, you look at Davenport, you look at Isaiah Foskey, who I haven't really seen much from so far. I know it's early, like I said, but I mean, defensive pass rushers and offensive line, those are two areas to where we've invested a lot of draft picks in depth-wise, and just none of them have worked out. So it's disappointing. But I think as soon as we head into the rest of the year, I think we'll get a chance to come up for air. I think, you know, the Saints will go in. I think when they play against the Bucs, I think they'll have a pretty good performance. I think that offensive line will have the opportunity to step back into this game, right? To step back up their game. They'll have the opportunity to do that. They're going to go up against some pretty mediocre defensive lines at some point throughout the year, and that's going to be their time to develop. Oh, but something's got to give because there's no playoff winning with this. We'll see what happens as we head into Lambeau against the Green Bay Packers. We don't know what's going on with the Jamal Williams injury. A reminder that Tony Jones Jr. is the only running back active right now for the Saints. I'm sure they could bring up maybe Merriweather, the rookie. They could bring him up from practice squad. They might change Taysom Hill's position on the depth chart for the third time in 3 weeks. That could happen too. He can go from tight end to quarterback to running back. I don't know, but that's going to be a big question mark heading into this weekend and what's going to happen at the running back spot. I got faith in his defense, not just this week, but all season long. I got you covered with all the Saints content all season long. Subscribe here on YouTube if you enjoy the content. Feel free to give it a like as well. Hit us up on Facebook where we put out daily content, halftime reports, Madden streams, all that in a bag of Zaps chips, baby. Thank you all. I'm excited for this season. If you're panicking, don't panic. If you're a Saints fan panicking about this offense, I know I keep reiterating it's early, but don't panic. Have patience. Team looks good. They'll be all right. A lot of things to work on. Team looks fine. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. And as always, who dat? We dat. Be dat. Let's go.
Here we come.